Welcome to the Market Frontlines. I'm Lyndsay Malchuk. What if the next breakout in clean tech doesn't come from a new discovery, but from rethinking something we have been staring at for decades? Because right now, there's a company challenging just that. The idea that silicone is just a commodity and instead positioning it as the backbone of three of the most aggressively funded and strategically critical markets on the planet. Fumed silica, batteries, and hydrogen, not as separate bets, but as one connected system. And the leader behind that wheel, that vision, is not playing small. I'm sitting down with Bernard Tourillon, CEO and President of HPQ Silicon. And this is a company quietly building a model that if it delivers, it doesn't just compete, it actually disrupts how these industries operate at scale. Bernard, it's so great to have you on the show, and I can't wait to learn more here.
Well, thank you very much. Very good introduction that covers pretty well what we do.
Let's get into it just a little bit more here if we can. You're asking the market to see HPQ as more than just a silicone story that you touched on a little bit there. You're connecting that fumed silica, the battery materials, and the hydrogen under one umbrella. Now, Bernard, on paper, that sounds bold. Now, in reality, it also raises a lot of eyebrows. So let me ask you what I think investors are really trying to figure out here. What is the unifying logic that makes these three pillars work together in a way that creates real value, not just as a narrative? Because if this clicks, it's powerful. However, if it doesn't, it's risk looking like three separate bets competing for attention.
Well, that's an interesting way of asking the question. I don't think they're separate. They are separate bet. So in a certain way, they reduce the risk, but they all have the same view, which is developing greener processes, okay, to make the material we need every day. Okay. That's really the concept. A lot of the material we use are sandwich materials. So they all have that common link. Where there's a bigger common link is on the silicone anode materials for batteries and the hydrogen. Okay. That's really where there's a bigger link. With regard to the fumed silica, what it is a completely new process that we, with pyrogenesis, have completely discovered, which allows us to completely demolish the standard industry. Okay, there are massive barriers to entry to making fumed silica, and we're getting rid of them because we're capable of going directly from quartz to fumed silica. One step, commercial grade. So we eliminate massive whole technology processes, plants, and all those issues. All right, and so that's really one of the central core. With regard to the silicone anode material for batteries, we've discovered that batteries, energy storage is a key factor, and it needs silicone, okay, to reach the next level. The problem has always been that although the ability of silicone to improve batteries has been known, its downside, which is basically its swelling and all those type of issues, mean its manufacturing into batteries has always been complicated. With our experience in making silicone, we figured a way to do it, and we've developed batteries, and we've done it really a full-size battery. I mean, we're talking about, 21700, 18650, real commercial scale batteries, and we've demonstrated our ability to do this. And the third area is where we've discovered how to make hydrogen on demand. There's two ways to make hydrogen: electrolysis, hydrolysis. Our process is hydrolysis, which is a chemical-based way, which allows us to extract the hydrogen in water through a chemical reaction with a metal, which is a recycled aluminum with silicone into it. So that's the common thread into this. And we have those three projects moving forward. And the beauty of HPQ is all three projects are coming almost to commercialization at the same time.
Wow.
So we don't really have to make a choice. They're all coming at the same time, all moving differently, and all advancing toward potential revenue generation over the next 12 months.
So great. Now, assuming that logic holds then, Bernard, let's talk about where this actually hits the ground first, because this is where markets get impatient then. So you have that fumed silica with immediate commercial relevance. You have the batteries, which, let's be honest, is crowded and brutally competitive. And then you have the hydrogen, which still lives somewhere between that hype and long-term execution. So here's a question no one's really asking directly. Where do you prove this model first in a way that forces the market to stop ignoring HPQ, not where it could work, where it has to work? Because until that happens, the story stays just that, Bernard, stays a story.
No, it's actually not. This is what we're doing right now at Fumed Silica, right? We've demonstrated at lab scale that we could make a material that was commercial grade, and that was validated by some of the biggest players in the industry. The next step was to scaling that up to the scale of pilot scale and replicate the result that we had done at lab scale. We have now done this. And then we've done this not a long time ago, okay? And by doing this, we've demonstrated that we have a commercially viable process. And we're now in discussions with players because they want us to go to the next level, which is, scaling up to 1,000 ton per year and even bigger. So this is the one that's coming into commercial scale.
Well, we'll take all of that. And then you touched on a good point there. Timing. Timing is really everything right now. I mean, we're watching global supply chains fracture, capital rotate into critical minerals, and governments doubling down on energy independence in ways we haven't seen in years. So you said this is an inflection point. So let's strip that down. Why now? I mean, what has changed behind the scenes, whether in your technology, your partnerships, or the market itself, that makes this moment different from every other almost there phase that early stage companies go through? Because being early is expensive, but being right at the right time, that's where things get interesting.
Yeah, I'll just use the example of Fumed Silica. All right, it took us time, but we've made it at lab scale, at pilot scale. So we've demonstrated we have a commercial material. We've actually announced not long ago we got a first pre-order of material to be used by end players. So that's starting to come into it. We are in advanced discussion. We've announced this. We've signed an MOU with one party that's showing the interest. Yeah. We've actually signed one LOI with the biggest player in the industry, which is Electrolysis, and we've signed an MOU with another player that's now interested in working with us, okay, to go to the finish line to produce material for commercial application. One of them is a traditional player that sees a need for additional material in the market. Right. And the other one is a new player that is actually looking for access to fumed silica for their own application. Okay. So that's a demonstration that there's a commercial interest moving forward.
Okay. Well, Bernard, I mean, this is a big vision, and whether people agree or not, it's one that actually can't be ignored. So thank you again for sitting down with us, and come back so we can dive in a little bit deeper. Again, that was Bernard Tourillon, CEO and President of HPQ Silicon. Now they're trading on the venture under HPQ, on the Frankfurt under O08, and on the OTCQB under HPQFF. If this caught your attention, go deeper. Visit hpqsilicon.com and start asking yourself a bigger question here. Are we looking at 3 separate opportunities, or one company trying to quietly position itself at the very center of it all? I'm Lyndsay Malchuk, and this is the Market Frontlines with Abaton Media. Stay tuned, there's more to come.